I bees in the trap, bees in the trap, I bees in the trap.
Welcome to my channel, babes. Y'all already know who it is. It's your girl Rari, and I'm back with another video. So today I'll be showing you how to do a wig on a sewing machine. The machine I'll be using is a Brother XM2701. You will need your bundles today, of course. I will be using 3 of my 613 bundles with the Roots .1B and a frontal. So we will be making a frontal wig today. This hair is from my collection, Labreeze Trap 2.8. The other tools that you will need, of course, is your fabric scissors. These, not shears, fabric scissors. You will need those. You'll need your thread. You'll need your bobbins, of course. And then we'll just get into it, pretty much. So the first step is going to be to double the wefts. So you know the bundles come single, but you want to double those together for thickness. So I'm using 18, 20, and 22-inch bundles. So I want to double my wefts for thickness. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to sew these tracks together so that the wefts are thick. Right now you'll see that I'm just threading my machine, and then I'm just going to stick those bundles into my machine. Don't pay attention to my hair. I had just took my wig off, so you can still see I have my braids with a little drop of bead around my edges. But yeah, so you'll see here I'll just go in. I'll hold the tracks together as I feed them through the machine and allow the machine to sew them together. Alright, so you will see that I am gripping the bundles together, the 2 single wefts together. I am holding the thread on the opposite side. So the thread that I pulled through the needle, you have to hold that so that it won't unravel. So you hold it, and then you begin to feed the wefts through the machine. At the beginning, you want to begin to sew, and then you're going to backstitch. So I'm pulling that down so that I can backstitch, and that's sealing the beginning of that weft. So it's sealing it so that it's for sure sewn together. You don't have to worry about the end of the wigs coming apart when they're stitching. I mean, when they're brushing or anything like that. So you just want to continue to feed those bundles right through the machine. And you'll notice that at the other end of the weft, when I get to the end, I'll also backstitch and do the exact same thing. So right here, you will see that my machine jammed up, and I had to, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I had to like wiggle the wefts from up under my foot presser, and then I take my scissors and I just cut the thread from underneath. So that way I'll be able to just get a fresh start here and just start the thread back over. I left this in here because I wanted people to see that it is normal for your machine to jam up. It's different things that can make it jam up. It could be that the thread is tangled. It could be that underneath is tangled. It could be that it got stuck under the actual spool of thread like mine just did. It was just stuck, like it lifted up as it was sewing, and it got stuck under the actual spool. And all I had to do was lift it up, unravel it, and put it back together. So if it jams up, all you want to do is just go through each step and make sure that your machine is set up properly. You get it threaded. You guys are actually going to get some footage of me threading my bobbin, because I noticed that my bobbin was also out when my thread jammed. So here's some footage here of me threading the bobbin. right here, I thought that I was showing you guys the weft sewn together, but I recorded with the camera further back and I zoomed in. So once I came to edit, I noticed that it wasn't as clear as I thought. But you guys get what I was doing there. I was just sewing them together. And then in this video, I do the same thing. And I just do the same thing with all 3 bundle sides. So here you go. Alright, so now we're going to get into the measurements, and this is a quick picture of all the different measurements that you will use when you're making the frontal unit. Some people only use 2, some people use 4, some people use 6. Me, I personally use 4. I use the first, the second, the fourth, the fifth, and the 6th. So I use 5. And sometimes I use the 3rd one, just depending. I get all 6 and then kind of choose which ones I need as I go. So let's get right into the video of me doing the measurements here. So first things first, we are going to go over the tools that we need to do measurements, of course. I already showed you what we need to make the wig, but now I'll show you for measurements. So we need a cap. I use a mesh dome cap. I like it because it's ventilated. The brand is Q-Fit. I order them in bulk off of Amazon. And then, of course, you'll need your tape measure. I have a pretty pink tape measure. And, you know, your bundles. You always need your bundles. And then you'll also need your scissors for this step. And you'll need your 2, well, not 2, but you need a silver Sharpie marker. You can use any marker that'll show up. I would say any metallic marker. That's the one that I prefer is Sharpie, but I know some people use Walmart brand, some people use Kroger brand, just a metallic marker. And then we're going to have our dome head. I'm using a 22-inch dome head because that is the circumference of her head. So you use their circumference to choose which dome head to use. That's important. So the first measurement we're going to use is going to be her front to back measurement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my tape right at the temple of my dome head. And I'm going to measure her front to back, which I believe was either 12 or 12 and a half. I think it was 12. Either way, I am just marking that right on the tape measure, front and back, with one of my pins. So you'll also need pins for this step. Let me know if you guys need or want a video of how I did the tape on my dome head, because I actually get a new dome head that's coming in tomorrow. And I can make a video on that too if you need me to, because this dome head is really old. The next measurement we're going to use is her her ear to ear over the top, which hers was 13 inches. So if it's 13, you're going to mark the halfway mark, which would be 6 and a half, and you're going to place that right in the middle. So the thing with wigs is you want them to be very proportionate. So anytime you use a measurement, you do the halfway mark and you put that in the middle on that first piece of tape that's going front to back. So I'm marking at the 13-inch mark, and then I'm going to go to the other end and I'm going to mark at the 0 mark is what it technically is on the tape measure. So I'm going to do this with all of the measurements. I'm just going to mark the front and the beginning and the end of the tape with every single measurement. Measurements are so important too, especially with frontal wigs, because frontals can get so tricky, and if they're too big, the lace will wrinkle. If they're too small, it won't fit. You don't want that. All right. So the next measurement that we are going to do is her temple to temple, which I noticed that the video got cut off. Her temple to temple, I believe, was 15.5. She sent me the wrong measurement, so I reached out to her, and I think I stopped recording during that time. But I just did her temple to temple, which was a 15.5. And then the next measurement that you're going to do is the back of the nape. Her nape was 5 inches, so as you can see, I have the 2.5 mark on that vertical line going up and down. And I'm marking on the 5-inch and on the 0-inch, the same exact way I did the rest of the measurements. So hers must have been 6, no, 5.5. Yep, like I said, 5.5. Yeah, I don't know why I was moving that tape like that, but I believe it was either 5.5 or 6. Clearly, I can't tell from this video. All right. So then you just want to make sure everything kind of lines up. You want to make sure the front pins lines up. And then after this, you're just going to take your cap and you're going to put your cap on, and you want to pull them down to those pins, because that's the exact size you want the cap, because that's the measurements of your client's head. So that's what's going to make it, when they put it on, it's going to fit exactly how it should, because you use the measurements that fit their exact head. As long as they sent you the right measurements, or you took the right measurements, or their boyfriend took it, whoever did their measurements. So here you go. You see I'm putting the cap on, pulling it down to all of the pins, making sure it's nice and flat. Here we go. So after you pull them down to the pins, this step is very important to make sure that that cap fits their head without being loose in the back or having that extra cap or the cap shrinking while you're sewing. You want to pull all of the excess cap up to the front, all the way to the front. So you want it to be as flat as possible onto that dome head. Now remember that you are doing the frontal, so the entire front of this cap is going to get cut off. So around the very front, if it like wrinkles up or anything, that is fine. The goal is for the back to be as tight as possible. So the back being a little bit, right there on the front being a little bit wrinkled, that's cool. That's perfectly fine. You just want to make sure the back of this cap is super flat. So when your client put this wig on, it fits their head nice and snug, perfectly fit. You see that? Smooth. Yep, just like that. It's perfect. So this is just me checking all of my measurements, making sure everything line up, everything is on point. All of the measurements is where I need them. Looked like the front to back was a little bit longer. I think it was supposed to be a 12.5. So I moved it up to where it should be, and then I'm going to pull that cap back forward so that I know that it's fit as it should. And you always want to move this pins for the nape if you have to move the cap up, because everything needs to be even. And here I am. I'm just pulling it back up, making sure it stays super flat. Yep, just like that. All right. So now that you have that cap pulled exactly where you want it to lay and how you want it to fit, you want to sew that excess cap down. When you're sewing this cap down, so if you're doing this method for a closure unit, you don't want to sew through the actual thick band underneath the cap. You're only sewing through the mesh part. Reason being, if you're giving this to a client, you don't want them to look under the cap and see a bunch of extra thread at the top of their wig. So if you're just sewing on that top layer, it prevents that line from being underneath the wig, and it still makes it look nice and uniform when your client get their wig. They won't even notice that you had to shrink the cap. They'll just notice that it fits perfectly fine, which is what you want. So you just want to go through and you just want to sew all of the extra cap down from start to finish. You can sew, you don't have to sew super tight, but tight enough to where it's going to stay nice and fit while you're using your machine. Alright, so now we're going to get into the guidelines, which is the lines you're going to follow when you're sewing your tracks onto your actual wig. So I'm going to first start by placing my frontal exactly where I want it to lay on the wig. You'll do this whether you're doing a frontal wig or a closure wig, because this is basically what you're going to base the rest of your tracks off of. Again, ignore my hair. I just took my wig off. Mind your business. Alright, so I'm pinning my frontal down nice and flat. You have to make sure that it is flat. If you do not, when you go to place this wig on your client, it will either wrinkle up or it will be too small. You don't want neither one of those. If you notice right there, I just measured to see how much cap I had left behind my frontal. There was 8 inches left, 8.5 inches to be exact. Her front to back measurement was 12.5 inches. We know that our frontals are 13 by 4 inches. Do the math. If the frontal is 4 inches front to back, you want to always have, so what I try to do is always have at least 8 to 9 inches remaining in the back. I've had some that was 7 and they barely fit, but the goal is to have 8 in the back, because well, it depends on the measurement, obviously. So if their head is 16 inches, you want to have you want to do 8. If their head is 16 inches, you want to do 16 minus 5. I will say 5 because sometimes you put 4.5. 4.5, because the goal is to place the frontal a half an inch in front of the hairline. So you're going to take their front to back and you're going to subtract 4.5 from it. And that's how much cap you should have behind your frontal. That is so important. So important. So I hope that whoever is watching this, keep that in mind. That is what's going to help you know that your wig is proportioned perfectly for your client. A frontal is 13 inches by 4 inches. So you're going to take 4.5 from their front to back, and that's where your frontal should be placed side to side. If you have a 13 by 6, you will do 6.5 inches. And the placement is a little bit different because they're shaped a tad bit different. So now let's get into these guidelines. I do my guidelines by drawing them all the way up the middle first. Depending on how many bundles you have, that's going to determine how many lines you'll have. If you're singling or doubling. If you're doing single tracks, your lines are going to be closer together and you're going to have more of them. If you're doubling them, they're going to be further apart and it's going to be less lines because clearly the hair is thicker. Some people triple their wefts, some people quadruple their wefts. So the thicker the actual hair is that you're sewing on, the further the lines will be apart. For mine, when I'm doubling tracks, I usually have around 10 to 12 lines. On this one, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines. So I draw the lines completely up the middle, and then I just connect them to the sides. With frontals, you usually do the longer bundle in the back. So I like to bring my track all the way up to the front because I want to see that length and those layers all the way up to the ear. You know, that makes it lay a lot natural versus having the longest length only in the nape of the neck and then it getting longer further up. You're already starting at the ear. So you want to bring that first track as close as possible up to the top. I don't take the first one all the way up to the top, up to the frontal, but that second track always comes up to the front. So you just continue to connect those lines. Again, these are the lines that you're going to sew your bundles onto. The bundles that we doubled at the beginning, we're going to sew onto these guidelines. And there you have it. Alright, so this is just a quick little snippet of me measuring my tracks. You have to do this. You have to make sure you have enough hair for your wig. So after you do your guidelines, you go in with your bundles and you line them up with every guideline. Make sure you have enough hair because it is stuck to get to the end of your wig and you don't have enough. By the time you're done lining up 2 bundles, you should still have at least 3 to 4 lines left. Those lines might look small, but that is a bundle worth of lines. So you'll notice here, I just lined up one. I'll line up the second one. By the time I finish the second bundle, I still have 3 lines left. That's a nice amount. You should have at least 3 to 4 lines still remaining after you do these 2 bundles. Boom. You see that? Oh, here we go. Alright, so now we are back in here to do our measurements, and what you will do is you will simply take your track, hold it up to the cap, measure it from start to finish, cut the weft, and then you literally just go onto your machine and you sew the track onto the cap. When you first begin to sew, you want to do just like you did when you were doubling the wefts, and you want to go forward, back stitch, forward, and then stitch. So you do not want to just start stitching. You want to make sure you seal the beginning, and then you're going to do the same thing at the end. So you're going to see me do that continuously back and forth through this entire video. And I will be going back onto the dome head to measure and then keep going back because I want to make sure that my cap is not stretching too much, it's not wrinkling up, it's fitting exactly how I want it. Because on the dome head, those are the measurements that I properly measured using the measurements that my client sent me. So yeah, get into it. Alright, so now you see the entire inside of this wig, and the final step is going to be to cut that cap from under the frontal. That way when we put this frontal onto our client, excuse me, when we put our wig onto our client, there's nothing but lace there against their skin, against their cap. And you want to cut close to the frontal, but not too close to where you cut the thread, but close enough to where you get the majority of the lace being exposed. Because you don't want to cut too close, because if anything happens where you need to replace the frontal, you want to have enough cap to sew the new frontal onto. And this is a picture of the wig. I hope this video was helpful. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please comment anything that you guys want to see, anything that I left out, anything that you liked about this video, anything. Comment, let me know. I love you guys, and thanks for watching.
100 of y'all suckers can't tell me nothing. I bees in the trap, bees in the trap. I bees